Hope you had a good break, little stretch of the legs, little empty of the bladder. Now we are going to jump into our second presentation for the day. It is called Don't Stop, Hyperpop, presented by Sarah Wolfe, who is a pop diva and games composer and has worked on a range of Aussie-made titles such as Solium Infernum, Mystiques, and Don't Stop, Girlypop. And she's here to take us to another dimension.
Hello. Just before we start, I do need to let everyone know that I'm like super neurodivergent. So I will be reading, woo! Okay, I thought there'd be more woos, whatever. So I will be reading from my notes a lot because the only thing my brain can retain is like the first verse of Ice Ice Baby or whatever, so sorry. Anyway, hi, I'm Sarah Wolfe. I'm here to tell you how to make your video game music pop, literally and metaphorically. I have an opinion. And it's amazing because it's actually the world's first 100% correct opinion. Pop music is the greatest genre. Does anyone agree? A couple of woos. Again, less woos than I thought, but that's fine. I will convince you by the end of this, I swear. So many iconic pop songs have taken influence from us, from gamers, from video games. We have Move It Up, Down, Left, Right, Oh, Switch It Up like Nintendo, Sabrina Carpenter. Pokemon Go, You Snorlax, Swear They've Been Sleeping on Me, Doja Cat. It feels really weird to speak it out. I feel like I'm doing that Louis Theroux, like, my money don't jiggle. Anyway, Touch Me While Your Bros Play Grand Theft Auto, Taylor Swift. I wasn't sure if I was going to put that one in there, but I did it and I said it out loud, so that's what you get. So I think it's about time that we make pop music and video games kiss. Sorry, this talk is a bit stupid. I mean, it's not. Everything I say is smart, but it is a bit stupid. In this talk, I'm going to be covering everything from pathways into the industry, as someone who came from a non-traditional composing background, to writing banging lyrics that hopefully won't annoy the hell out of a player after they've listened to it like 20 times over. So how did a pop girly like me sneak their way into the gaming industry, I hear you all asking? As an intro to who I am, if you don't know me, let me show you how I built out my personal skill tree and multi-classed myself to work both creatively and in the corporate world. Yes, I've got two sides of the brain going at all times. When I finished school, I went straight into studying music. I don't know why I pictured myself having a laser pointer, so if I'm doing this a lot, it's because I like practiced like that. Anyway, when I finished school, I went straight into studying music to get a singing degree. And then I panicked over what job I could possibly get with a singing degree, so I dropped out. I studied for a whole year though, so good for me. I ended up getting a job in music media, where I taught myself the basics of journalism so that I could go review shows, which was like a thinly veiled attempt to just go to shows for free. And in that job, I also ended up teaching myself how to video edit, create content, and how to manage social media accounts. Woo, corporate girly. After working in media for a while, I moved over to working in record labels in their marketing departments. The first label I worked at was Tomorrow Music. It was a dance label that you might have originally known as Ministry of Sound Australia. It was cool. There I worked with artists like Fisher and Pinau and Jax Jones and Loud Luxury. After Tomorrow Music, I hopped over to Due Process, which was an indie record label, still is, an indie record label with a roster that includes artists like Mallrat, TK Midza, Sam Fender, Sly Withers, and Mumford & Sons. There I was able to pick up so much knowledge of the music industry while I was working at those labels, and I decided it was about time I take the leap and start creating my own music. That is when I started my own solo pop project, Sarah Wolfe, as well as having the honour of writing for other artists. Yeah, Sarah Wolfe is not my real name. I named the Wolf part after a really bad tattoo I have. Anyway, not important. Carrying on. Now, as I'm sure we all know, working in creative industries, sometimes when your work and your passion combine, it can become a bit much. So I decided that making music and working in the music industry was starting to get a bit overwhelming. So I made the decision to move industries into my other great love, video games. Yay. I broke off from my original skill tree. Somewhere up there, you know, again, laser point. I'm going to laugh at my own jokes, that's fine. Where the hell was I up to? Oh yeah, I broke off from my original skill tree and made the shift into gaming, and I scored a role as the community content manager for League of Geeks. They were working on 2 games at that time, Jump Light Odyssey and Solium Infernum, which is how I met the incredible composer Michael Allen, who was also speaking at high school this year, so I'll see you all there. As the community content manager, I helped out with content creation, social media management, marketing, and community engagement, One of my roles there was also to edit together our trailers. And when I was editing together the release trailer for Solium Infernum, I thought it needed a little extra, something special. So I kind of nepo babied myself and pitched the idea of creating a custom song for Solium Infernum to the team. And they were super keen. So I used samples from Michael Allen's incredible soundtrack. And me and another amazing artist and producer, Xavier Dunn, we created a track called Eternal Nights, which was written from the perspective of Lilith, one of the archfiends. I'll play the trailer for you now. Slay. Thanks. So from that taste of writing music for video games, I was absolutely hooked. I got to know Ali McLean Hennessy when we both worked together at League of Geeks, and when she started working on Mystiques, she reached out to me with an incredible music pitch, which was pop music for a haunted antiquing game. Mystiques ended up showcasing at South by Southwest last year, and so did I as an artist. And at one of my performances where I was playing my music and some of the Mystiques music, I met Jane, who was working on Don't Stop Girlypop. She reached out to me at the beginning of this year and mentioned how much she loved what I had done for Mystiques, and she wanted me to write some hardcore hyperpop tracks for her game. Thus, my video game music niche was born, which is the funnest, girly-popest, hyperpop music. I was going to put a swear word in here, but I'm not, but you can imagine what it is. It's, crafted to fit into a video game landscape. I know that was an incredibly long-winded intro, and you might be thinking, why do I care? Just talk about the bops. But this brings me to my first point. Come on, clicker. Cool. This brings me to my first point. If you're starting out in the industry or just trying to get your foot into the door, there's absolutely no one way of getting into gaming, especially writing music for games. You never know when your extra skills or outside influences or the community you build will come in handy, so do not feel disheartened if you haven't found your in yet, because every little step, even if it's a zigzag, gets you closer. When I was writing that zigzag, all I could picture was that, like, in Game of Thrones when they were like, why didn't he zigzag? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? No, that's, again, I'm too on the internet. Now my lore is covered, let's dive into writing pop bangers for games. I apologize in advance for repeatedly using the words tracks, versions, and vibes. I couldn't think of other words to use, and you'll see why. But importantly, let me introduce you to Xavier Dunn, who writes and produces all the lovely game music with me. Xavier's an ARIA-nominated producer, songwriter, and artist with multiple gold and platinum records, and has worked with artists like Jack River, Illy, 3%, Peach PRC, Mia Rodriguez, Thelma Plum. If you're an Aussie music fan, chances are you've heard his work. But most importantly, Xavier's an honorary Girlypop. Slay. Now to the games. This is Mystiques Haunted Antiques. A bit about Mystiques. It's an antiquing game about the 4 worst women you've ever met. Gem, Aspen, Winnie, and Barb run a failing antique store that can only be saved by one thing: psychic powers. You go on jobs to deceased estates, run down motels, and more to find valuable antiques to sell back at the shop. The sonic references for Mystiques were artists like Charlie XCX, Rina Sawayama, Marina, Spice Girls, Carly Rae Jepsen, Hilary Duff, basically all the iconic pop girlies that you can think of. Don't Stop Girlypop. Don't Stop Girlypop is a Y2K... Am I talking too fast, by the way? I feel like I just raced through. No, thumbs up? Okay, the correct speed? All right. I watch TikToks on double speed, so this is like this. Don't Stop Girlypop is a Y2K arena movement shooter where standing still is not an option. The faster you go, the more damage you deal, and the more you heal. Don't Stop Girlypop combines the riotous fun of boomer shooter mechanics with advanced contemporary movement abilities. Can you tell that I didn't write that because it actually sounds really good and proper? The references for Don't Stop Girlypop were artists like Sophie, Pink Pantheress, Paris Hilton, Slater, Kim Petras, so still pop music but leaning more into that hyperpop end. I wish writing pop music for video game soundtracks was as simple as writing a traditional pop song and just slotting it in, but the practicalities of fitting lyrics and vocals into a game necessitate some creative thinking. The number one tip I can give you for putting pop music into your game is to create multiple versions of each track. Actually, maybe the number one tip I should be giving you is to make a banging spreadsheet to stay organized. This is the track tracker I made for Don't Stop Girlypop. For each song we wrote, we created 9 different versions. With it being a shooter, the music needed to follow the intensity of the combat in 3 different stages that ramped up each time. When we started a new song, the first version we wrote, or the bass track, was always what we called the bubble pop version, but technically is called the combat 1 version. The bubble pop track was where we nailed down exactly what melodies and lyrics we wanted and what the overall structure and vibe of that track was going to be. Sonically, this version was, as our nickname implies, usually super bubbly pop, making use of all the fun, girly, hyperpop sounds. Once that was approved, we built on it to create the rest of the versions. The Combat 2 track was an industrial version of the pop track, where we were able to play around with much harsher sounds, using lots of metal and clanking and weapon sounds. And then the Combat 3 was like an epic mashup of both the bubbly pop and the industrial tracks. For those versions, we also re-recorded a lot of the vocals to make them shoutier or with higher energy, almost like a remix version. So each version itself is around a minute long, and all of them loop perfectly together to give the effect of one long, never-ending, crazy, fun hyperpop track. Each of those 3 combat tracks have versions without vocals as well, so I kind of cheated when I say we have 9 versions. 3 of them are non-vocal versions. I think it still counts. So what was I saying? And we also created a couple of different ambient or chill versions that also loop in. So the 9 different versions we made for Don't Stop Girlypop are: number 1, the ambient with no vocals; number 2, combat 1. I've already fucked it up. I swore. Damn it. Ignore. 2, combat 1, bubble pop. 3, combat 1, bubble pop with no vocals. 4, combat 2, industrial. 5, combat 2, industrial with no vocals. 6, combat 3, bubble industrial combo. 7, combat 3, bubble industrial combo with no vocals. 8, chill bubble pop, no vocals. And 9, chill industrial, no vocals. I hated writing out the file names for all of them. It took forever. In game music, you're always seeking that balance in the audio of matching the vibe, being sonically interesting, but not standing out in a way that the player notices it too much or starts to become annoyed by it. For pop music in particular, you can easily run into this problem just by the nature of how in your face it can be. The lucky part of both the games that I'm working on is that music, and pop music in particular, is an important part of the aesthetic and gameplay and is meant to stand out as a feature. But even then, a player could fatigue fast hearing the same lyrics and melodies over and over again. Having multiple different versions for each track helps to keep things interesting, jumping between the vocal versus non-vocal version to avoid that fatigue. In the clip I'm about to play you, I've looped the ambient into the Combat 1 and then Combat 2 and then Combat 3 versions on some example footage. This isn't exactly how it will function in the game, as you're more likely to transition between combat and one of the ambient or chill versions, but it'll give you the vibe. So strap in.
She shows up, it is time. Make a speed boost, yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot. See, isn't pop music so fun? Anyway. So that was Don't Stop Girlypop. For Mystiques, we're still in the early days of writing music for it. Oh, wait, no, backtrack. Just a couple of messages for Don't Stop Girlypop. There's a demo that you'll be able to play soon. Really exciting. I can't give you more information on the date, but it's soon. Wishlist it. Leave a nice review, etc. Next, Mystiques. We're still in the early days of writing music for Mystiques, so I don't have a whole lot to show you or chat about. But with it being more of an exploration and decorating style game, rather than a shooter like Don't Stop Girlypop, the way we tackled it is a bit different. The first day, we being Zabe and I, got into the studio to write for it. We spent the whole time just throwing down random melodies and testing out different vibes. I got into the most magical girl headspace I could get into and crafted a character for myself that isn't afraid to say things like, I am the perfect angel, I'm dripping in mystique. The first track we sent to Ali and the team was more of a proof of concept track where we were just trying to make sure we had hit the vibes the team wanted. We clearly did something right because that track ended up being the title track for Mystiques that plays in the intro. If you're not ready to make your entire soundtrack pop-based, which, I understand, it's a lot, or if you're interested in exploring more like traditional songwriting-based music with lyrics and other genres as well, I think the easiest way to incorporate that into your game is in your intro track or in your beginning main menu audio, because you don't have to make 9 different versions, whatever. It sets the tone for the entire game, and then you don't have to worry, that's what I just said, you don't have to worry about making a bunch of versions. This is still a work in progress build for Mystiques, but here is how the gameplay is looking with the little intro as well.
Mystiques! When you're feeling down, just repeat after me. I'm the center of the world, I'm dripping in mystique.
That's a little sneak peek of Mystiques. And I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure there is currently, or there was at least, a demo that you can play at Acme. So go play, go slay, etc. And of course, because Mystiques, I'm sorry, there's a lot of like music clips that I'm going to play you in this specific section. I don't know why I'm saying sorry, they're all bangers, you can have fun. Because Mystiques is about haunted antiques, we had to make a spooky version of the title track specifically for the trailer. So this is how that sounds.
Mystiques,
We are currently organising the tracks for Mystiques by working on a new song for each of the biomes that you visit. So you go out to estate sales and you explore through all their stuff. So the tracks we write here are longer, around 3 to 4 minutes long, but with less versions than Don't Stop Girlypop. We focused on the main pop track that plays when you're on the way to the estate. So that's the one with all like the lyrics and the woo. And then crafted an ambient version that plays while you're exploring to ensure that the song wasn't distracting to the gameplay. It was also fun to build the music into the different objects in the game. In one of the estates, you find a record player, so we made an old like dad rock version of that biomes track to play when you explore the record player. I'm going to play more music, I'm so sorry. Ignore the visuals behind the audio here. We don't have this like visual yet, but it's just so you have something to look at. But this is another of the like biomes like pop tracks, and then I put a little bit of the like dad rock version at the end.
Lost my mind again, and I don't wanna find it now. Maybe this is for the best. I lost my mind again, and I don't wanna find it now. I'm happy living in my
Yes. Next. That's the overview of the songs and the games and stuff. And now for the fun part, and this is I swear, the only audience interaction I'm going to make everyone do. But hands up if you enjoy writing lyrics. Okay. There's at least like 10 to 15 people. That rules. For me personally, it's my favorite part of songwriting, and probably the part that I think is kind of used the least in game soundtracks. Probably because lyrics are where a lot of that push and pull I was talking about before, where it's like if you hear the same thing over and over again, you're going to be like, please shut up, stop singing at me. So the way you normally write most pop songs is working on the instrumental, then the melodies, and then the lyrics. Because I'm a bit of a psycho, the first thing I usually do is write the lyrics. You'd be really scared to look at the notes app on my phone and see what I write in there at 2 a.m. But because of that, and how important I find lyrics, the first thing I did for both games was dive into as much of the lore and the story I could get my hands on. This was the same approach I used when I started writing Eternal Nights for Solium Infernum, because using the language and story of the game in your lyrics will really help tie it into that universe and helps create a beautiful story in the song. And narrative designers should fear me, because I will always come knocking on your door asking for all your beautiful, golden, lovely words that I will steal. But don't stop. The extra fun challenge that we were given was that they wanted the soundtrack to exist on its own in the real world, our world, I guess, as an album, but also be relevant to the story of the game. So the language we use hinted to the game and the story, but we avoided using too many game-specific terms in most of the songs. Often the hardest part of writing lyrics is knowing where to start. There is sometimes an extra vulnerability that goes into writing lyrics because there is nowhere to hide. The general public may not understand the ins and outs of musical terms, but they know when something usually sounds good. With lyrics, they understand pretty much everything and will be quicker to relate or to turn away from them or tell you that you suck. No one's ever done that, by the way. I don't think, at least to my face. Often the hardest part of writing, I said that. For each track we worked on, for Don't Stop Girlypop, we were given a title or like a vibe for each and a bit of info on the section of the game that the song will feature in. But other than that, we were kind of had free reign for most of the tracks in the direction we wanted the lyrics to take. So whenever I'm stuck in my lyric writing, there are 3 styles of writing that I fall back on. I think I didn't make these up, but this is like my 3 in the way I like to collect them. So to spark inspiration, I would usually do one of the following, or sometimes a combo of them. Making up a story of what happens in the song, going all in on the theme of the track, and making repetition your feature. So we'll start with making up a story. This style is often the most used and probably what people go to the most when it comes to writing music. In games, this applies on 2 levels. There's the overarching story that the entire game is telling, and then there are the little moments in time that you're trying to capture within a song. It's going to be hard to convert the entire narrative of your game into a 1-minute loop of lyrics. Of course, it's always important to think about where you are thematically in the game, but with that knowledge, I would often create my own mini-stories that are much more manageable when it comes to writing lyrics. The stories I made up aren't necessarily 100% game lore, but helped add a bit of structure to what I wanted to say. For example, in one of the tracks, Killing with Kindness, when the lyrics are up there, I pictured myself finding a friend that was super down in the dumps and making sure that they knew I was there to help them no matter what. Help them with like guns and whatever. The lyrics are up on screen, and this is how Kill 'Em With Kindness sounds. That was Kill 'Em With Kindness. Yay. I know it sounds like a really nice title, and then you hear the song, you're like, oh my God, relax. The second technique I would use is what I call going all in on the theme. This is a side story, but I recently started learning archery, and I was writing in my aforementioned notes app all the like fun puns and metaphors that I was thinking of when I was practicing that I could maybe use in songs. And when Jane gave us the title of one of the tracks she wanted us to make, called Cupid of Death, I knew it was the absolute perfect place for me to unleash some of them. For this style of songwriting, I try to find every term or phrase or word that is related to the main theme and start crafting like fun lyrics from there. It doesn't necessarily have a story, but it's just, you're setting a vibe. The first track we wrote was called, not up here, but it was called Freak of Nature. And I combined like this technique with a story-based lyrics to make a really disgusting bug-themed track, which I don't have for you here, but you'll just have to get the game when it comes out. The lyrics for Cupid of Death are up on the screen, and here's what it sounds like. The last style of writing that I like to employ is making repetition a main feature. When I was preparing for this talk, I ended up reading an interview with someone called, I'm going to fuck this name up, sorry for swearing again, Joseph Nunez, who was the lead author on a study that looked at thousands of hit songs from the past 50 or so years and what they all have in common. And also, if I ever did a study, that would so be what I would do a study on. That's great. It isn't hard to guess what that thing is, though. It's repetition. In the interview, he said, songs that are more repetitive get listeners in pop music to want to sing along and want to repeat the chorus with you. Once you got onto the hottest 100, not our Triple J Hottest 100, the other one. The more you repeated the chorus, the more word repetition, the less complex the song, the better it did. Using repetition well is one of the most standout features in pop songwriting, and it's one of the reasons Taylor Swift's Shake It Off is probably one of her biggest hits to this day. Banger. But I think this technique should come with a slight warning for video game soundtracks, as I've mentioned plenty of times in this chat. The last thing you want to do is fatigue your audience, and repetitive lyrics are in danger of reaching that limit. Hearing a song on the radio a few times a day is different to hearing it over and over and over when you're just trying to be a boss and get through a level. With that in mind, I did use it sparingly, but it was a really useful technique for a song like I Am the Revolution, which was very much meant to be like an inspiring call to arms type track. Obviously, this one's a bit more extreme in the repetition, but I would consider just like sprinkling in a little bit for your big hooks or your choruses. And this is what I Am the Revolution sounds like. you want to sing along. Hope so. As I mentioned, I did a lot of this music with the lovely Xavier Dunn, and since he couldn't be here, I got him to record some of his top tips. He recorded 2 of them for you, so I hope that you enjoy.
Hi Sarah and hi everyone, my name's Xavier Dunn. Here are some of my tips for putting pop music in video games. My first tip is really just breaking down, songs into just 3 separate sections and eventually structuring them and putting them in different sort of orders just to see how it sounds. As opposed to a traditional pop song, which is, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, making pop music, keeping it really simplified, but putting it into a game context where it doesn't have to be just a 3-minute or 2 minutes 30 kind of traditional song. It can go for however long you want it to go for, or as short. So I think just bringing it down into 3 sections sort of really help the flow. So let's open up Killin' with Kindness. Let's look at hook A. And then this is hook B. And then this is hook C. And then you can see in the final song, I've rejigged them just because we only needed to do probably 1:15, 1:30 for each loop. I've started with hook C and just taken some things out sonically so it feels like a build. Then hook A, a bit more prominent, and then hook A again, which acts as more of a build, and then hook B, which is quite strong, and hook C, which is like a nice ride out. My second tip, obviously when we're making good pop music in game music, we really want the vocals to stand out. So here are a couple of plugins that I like to use to make the vocals really stand out. So I'm going to show Sarah's raw vocals, so don't come at me.
I know life can be scary. The horrors pile up.
So I love CLA vocals. These ones are amazing. I just crank the treble, compress, just simmer a bit on the low, and then it sounds like this.
I know life can be scary.
Punches up, and then I ride it with some Pro C2 compression.
I know life can be scary.
And then I get some Pro Q3.
I know
just
life
pushing
can
that
be
top
scary.
end again, and then taking some of the DS.
I know.
Just that top frequency, just pulling that a bit, and then EQing again, just getting the
I
lows out.
know life can.
You can see my sends down here. I've got some nice verb.
I know life can be scary. The horrors pile up.
Echoplex. A lot of sound toys plugins for the effects. I always like to stack vocals, so this is middle, left, and right.
I know life can be scary. The horrors pile up.
And then when we go into hook B, there are multiple vocals, harmonies.
Bubbles to pop, pop, pop. Hearts to stop, stop, stop.
And they all individually have the same processing, just so they can punch and really stand out.
So yeah, thanks Dave. I'll tell him you all clapped for him. He'll be super excited. So we've covered getting into the industry, the writing process, and now I want to touch on another important part of writing any music, be it pop music or instrumentals for video game soundtracks, and that is feedback. This is some advice I actually learned from a talk Michael Allen did a few years back at Games Week, and it was to leave your ego out of it. No matter how much of a business composing for games is, it is also inherently personal, as any creative work is. That can often compound when you add in something extra personal like writing lyrics. Obviously, that's really personal to me sometimes. The most important thing to remember is you are part of a team and you are writing to a brief. Of course, it's important to learn when you should push back on a note because you are often the expert in your field for music. But it's even more important to know how to work as a team, how to take on feedback, how to interpret notes, and how to work towards a unified goal. So take pride in your work, but don't be so precious about it that it destroys the trust you're building between yourself and the developers. If you leave your ego out of it, I guarantee that you will come up with a much more delightful product and have a much better writing experience. Here's my final thoughts. How am I doing for time? Good? Okay, I'll try and speed through this. Final thoughts. I didn't write a note for it, so I sung it. You're welcome. If you want to get into writing music for games, be it pop music or whatever, try as many things as you can. And that means trying and learning things that may be outside of music or composing. Whether it's learning a new skill, making a new connection, going to events like these, you never know what it is that will get your foot in the door. But if you're trying a bunch of things, one will eventually work. And if it doesn't work, you'll be able to take away learnings from that experience regardless. A very important side note to this is to always be kind. especially when you're networking with people. Genuine connections with your fellow game makers are what the industry is built on, and being kind and thoughtful will take you far. If you go into an event like High Score or anything at Games Week with this mindset, I guarantee it'll take you a lot further than trying to hustle your way in. And next, stay organized. Oh my God, stay organized. Again, I have ADHD amongst a bunch of other things in here. And so I know how hard it can be. File management and tracking documents could be their own separate talk entirely for how integral it is to the process, especially when you're dealing with 9 different versions of one song. Here's a larger version of the sheet I made for Don't Stop Girlypop. It was shared with Jane from the dev team and had all the info she needed, from BPMs to lyrics, links to all the latest versions, a spot for us to write notes and feedback, and importantly, a sign-off column so I could get dopamine from finishing something. Next. If you've listened to this talk and you're thinking, hell yeah, I want to put some pop bangers into my game, first think about how pop music will work for your game genre and how the multiple versions that you will inevitably have to create will work together. Whether it's 9 different 1-minute loops like we made for Don't Stop Girlypop, or 2 to 3 4-minute loops for Mystiques, really consider how the music will mesh well with your game genre. Like I've said repeatedly, the last thing you want to do is fatigue your audience with non-stop pop bangers, even though I personally would love that. So figure out what version will be your bass track and then work off of that for your loops. And don't be a dummy like me and write a melody that has a pickup, because it will destroy your loops forever and you'll be really upset. Again, if you're stuck writing lyrics, find inspiration by 1, making up a story, 2, going all in on the theme of the track, and 3, focusing in on a repetition. We've spoken enough about that. Next. If you don't want to make your entire soundtrack pop music, you can still use it as a feature moment in so many places. Title tracks, end credits, trailers, maybe even a pop-inspired side mission. There's so much flexibility and fun to be had with pop songwriting in video game soundtracks. This segues me nicely into my next tip, which pop music can be used for your games marketing. If you caught my 5-minute speedrun talk at last year's High Score, you'll know how passionate I am about using music to market video games as well. When you work as both a creative and in an office in marketing like I do, you're sometimes, unfortunately, always thinking of ways that you can do, yay, marketing, jazz hands, publicity. So using music in your marketing is such a fun way to bring in new audiences and excite the ones that you already built. That is how I managed to sneak a pop track into Michael Allen's incredible soundtrack for Solium Infernum. It was originally just written for the game's release trailer, but the reaction was so great that we also ended up putting it as the end credit song. You wouldn't think that a strategy game where you play as archfiends vying for the throne of hell would be a place for a pop-leaning banger, but as I said at the start, pop music is the world's greatest genre, so it can find a place anywhere. Similar to file management, marketing your game soundtrack is a whole talk in itself, so if you want to know more about it, come find me, come chat to me. Another incredible part of using pop music in your soundtracks is think of all the artists that you could collaborate with for it. You'd be surprised just how many artists that aren't in the gaming industry absolutely love to game. There are some great international examples of this, especially at the moment, from Zane's recent song for Borderlands 4 to Halsey's track for Diablo, and I think it's about time that Aussie music and the games industry comes together a bit more. Finally, and most importantly, if you're writing pop music for video games, have fun. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you are ending on a note like have fun. But that is the whole core of what pop music is about, usually. Unless you're Robin and you're writing really sad bangers. Niche pop reference. Real life Sarah would be really terrified to write a lyric that's like, I'm a disgusting, nasty little thing, you wish you could be a freak like me. But pop music video game Sarah absolutely could. The Girlypop world is one filled with joy and love and acceptance, and the process will be so much more enjoyable if you're able to peel off your nervous, disgusting little flesh and transform into a shining fairy that you are. Thank you.
Thank you. You know what? I think have fun also applies to games, because what's the point of them if they're not fun? Am I right?
Have fun applies to everything that you can think of in life, I think.
Taxes?
Have fun. Make them fun. Make them a little game.
Be creative.
Be creative.
That's not real advice.
Everybody's so creative.
That is not tax advice. Okay, so I think that was a really great overview of the broader scope that music can have in games. I think, it's an opportunity to rethink music, like you were saying, using it in marketing and things like that. Sometimes it can maybe start to sit as just a soundtrack, a composition for playing, but I really like how you're bringing kind of your personal skills and perspective in to shift it.
Thanks.
Well, and I also really love, nepo babying yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's the point in I was going to say, what's the point in working somewhere if you can't nepo baby yourself in? That sounds really bad, though. I don't mean it like
what's
that.
the point in being born?
What's the point of being born if you can't nepo baby yourself? No,
Yeah.
I mean, by nepo babying, like, work hard to get to the spot where you can nepo baby yourself, I think is the...
Be the nepo baby you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Be your own nepo baby.
Yeah. So as you're writing songs, do you tend to write them as a traditional pop song first and then split it apart and rework it for each of those like combat states and things like that? Or are you starting with, okay, this is what my combat track is going to be and I build on top of it?
Yeah, for the first track we wrote for Don't Stop Girlypop, we wrote it as a traditional pop song and then realized really fast that that was the worst possible way that we could have done it. Because Jane was like, this is not going to function, because you kind of need the ability to like shift between like how fast you're going in a game, and like if the player is pushing through something really fast, you don't have time to sit and wait to listen to a whole song, if that makes sense. So it was easier, and Zabe kind of touched on this when he was chatting, to kind of chunk it up into hooks. So for each song we wrote, it had like 3 main sections or 3 main hooks that we wrote for each of them, and one, like, we kind of viewed it as still like the verse, the pre-chorus and the chorus, but like each of them could sit on their own as their own like banging bit. Not banging, I don't know why I used the word banging, sorry. What was I saying? I distracted myself. Yeah, so the 3 main like sections is what we kind of played around with, and then you can kind of like loop into the next like combat section at any point in time, and it wouldn't like affect the player as much.
Well, that's something that I really noticed, that the transitions between those different states was very, very smooth. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you, quite honestly.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I think that's something that's quite difficult to do. I think, I've seen huge budget AAA titles that still seem to almost just fade between. And it's not that that's bad or it stands out, but I think it stands out when it is that smooth that I'm not sure I would have really noticed that now we've moved into a different state, right? And I know that you have a background DJing as well. Do you think those are some skills that helped you build the tracks in a way that the transitions were very, very smooth?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even considered that, but I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Now you can use that in other talks.
Now I'm gonna steal that and say, yeah. I also like to DJ. Yeah, and I think because like I have a background, as I said, I worked in dance music as well, and I just kind of got used to hearing things that would be able to like flow nicely into each other. And Zabe also writes a lot of dance music and pop music too. So I think both of us had a lot of like strong skills in that area to be able to be really like clean with it, I guess. Yeah, I guess that is a great idea. Look at your loops as DJ tracks.
Well, I also think it's interesting because it is something that I think pop music or dance tracks maybe does better or has the opportunity to do better. It's like more built into the culture than it is in, say, orchestral music. But often there can be sort of this split between the two where people view orchestral or classical as being higher brow, more intelligent in some way. But it really is looking at like the differences and the skills that each one can offer, right? And I love that that's something that you seem to really lean into. The smile is already coming out. You're like,
I mean, we already know that I love that.
So, but how do you go about, I guess, shedding the sense of cringe that some people can maybe try to impress upon you when you love something that isn't necessarily considered highbrow?
Yeah, I had this issue. I think when I was in high school, I loved Taylor Swift. I loved Carly Rae Jepsen, but I was always really embarrassed. Carly Rae Jepsen. Oh my God, if you haven't listened to her album, Dedicated, Emotion. Anyway, let's be on the
Carly is one of the best pop stars in the world, in my opinion,
gosh,
and she's
yes.
so slept on.
So slept on. Anyway, listen to Carly Rae Jepsen, she slaps.
We'll talk about this later.
Yeah. Was I saying? Oh yeah. So yeah, I was fully embarrassed to admit it, and I mean I did also listen to a lot of like indie and a lot of other genres, but like I always went back to pop music. It just made me feel good, and I think that is what kind of like broke me out. And also, like, when like you'd get into your 20s and your brain kind of turns on and you're like, oh yeah, I don't care that other people think it's cringe or lame. Like, everything we do is cringe and lame. That's the fun of being alive. Like, really philosophical. The same applies when you're writing lyrics. Like, that can often be really humiliating because you're like, here's my little thoughts. Tell me you like them. So like, writing song lyrics, especially writing lyrics when I was writing for other artists as well, is what really broke me out of that, like, I'm cringe and embarrassed. Like, you just kind of get into that headspace where you're like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and that's fine. And people not liking something doesn't mean that it's a bad thing.
I guess it sounds like it's also really related to learning how to really listen to yourself and be connected with what it is that you like, rather than being influenced by what it is you think would be better if you liked.
Yeah, and this is going to be a bit TMI, but I had brain surgery a couple of years ago, and after that, I was like, oh, I don't really care about
They just took
much
out
anymore.
the
They took
part
out the
of your
care
brain,
part.
yeah.
No, but I
That's
was
what
like,
the surgery was for.
that was that was just to implant pop music right into my skull.
Mm.
No, but I was kind of like after that, going through something like that, I was like, why would I ever care? But I mean, obviously, I care about being a nice person. That's not what I mean, but I don't care as much about if people like don't like something that I do, or like I'm less embarrassed now. Maybe they did take out some core parts of my brain, but I don't feel embarrassment anymore.
It's not
Whatever.
your business.
I'm a lover. I love to love things, and I love pop music.
Yeah, and I love that you love things.
I love that you love that I love.
Oh my
things.
god. What are some examples of other games that have used pop songs in video games that you've found interesting or inspiring?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's not like full on pop, but it is very lyric based. And I know Montaigne spoke at high school last year about Stray Gods, but that was a really like fascinating talk. And that was right. I watched their talk right before I went into writing like my own music. And it really, really helped me like conceptualize how like music with lyrics and everything would even work in a game, because especially for Stray Gods, it was even trickier because it was like built into the narrative, and if you made a decision that changed the entire like path of where the song went. But I was like, if they can make that work, I can make pop bangers work, you know what I mean? So I think that is definitely one of my top ones. And also not necessarily pop, but you know in Baldur's Gate where you're like fighting Raphael and there's that song and it's like the claw, down comes the claw. Does anyone know that song from Baldur's Gate? Yeah, it's a banger. I loved listening to that when I was playing that, even though that fight went for so long and I listened to it over and over again. I loved it. It was fun.
Well, that leads us into something that I wanted to talk about, which is repetition. And you're right, Xavier did kind of touch on this with the 3 hooks. But is there a way to do repetition musically that isn't necessarily obvious? Like, are there any little tricks? Because I feel like there's a real skill to getting people into almost that hypnotic state, right? Where they're hearing the repetition, but it's not obvious to them.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think like when we were talking about the different sections, you can see that there was 2 A sections, one after the other, and one was kind of like a build version and one was the more like core version of it. And I think it's about like for each section almost finding multiple, I can't stop saying the word loops, but like
if it's the word, it's
the word of the day. So like there's the like core version of that, like one chunk of that one song, and then there's like a more chilled version or a more build up version, and you just like play with them like puzzle pieces, I guess, until you find something that like flows really nicely. And like you said, you don't want to notice it at the same time as like you do want it to be noticed. I don't know, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just like playing around with your like sections a lot and trying to, especially when you're writing the melodies and the lyrics for your like in one song, if you have 3 sections, try to make them like nice distinct melodies, so that everything doesn't sound like it's flowing into one thing too, because I think that's a bit fatiguing too if you have that level of repetition. So like use repetition in like one section of one part of your song.
And then how do you balance that with cohesion?
That's a great question.
You're like, that's a great question, unask it.
Yeah, take it back.
You can mull on that
I'll mull on it.
and we can come back to
Yeah.
it. Or you can send out an email.
I'll send out a
I don't know.
text alert.
I don't know if that's a thing. That's fair enough. Also, vocals, lyrics, obviously, is something that very easily stands out as being repetitive. Is something that I noticed in some of the clips that you showed is maybe this leaning towards using vocals more like an instrument and playing with the effects there and sort of in that way distorting the words and removing that bit of recognizability. Is that?
Yeah, that's for
Is that
sure
accurate?
something, especially because you have that Combat 1 track, which is the bubble pop track, which is, like I said, like the core pop song of it all. The Combat 2 track was where we kind of used, like you kind of saw it when we were doing that Slam Pop Dash song. We took out a lot of the lyrics so it wouldn't fatigue the audience as much and kind of made them like more sample-like vocals, and then brought everything back in a new way for the like all-together version where we re-recorded some of the vocals and still used them as like you said, instruments. Like I'm more speaking and yelling the words there than I am singing them. So I think that's the other thing for your loops is like you want them to be distinctive and you also want them to help with that fatigue like you said, for the lyrics.
We had someone say, not really a question, but as a fellow neurodivergent who is too socially anxious to cheer, I will do so here. Woo.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would now like to, I'll give a 3-second countdown so you can center yourselves. Give you the opportunity to woo, even if you're a little bit nervous. I'm going to do the loudest woo, warning to the sound desk to turn me down, because I think it's a great opportunity to just like
let the woo out. Don't be
settle
embarrassed.
yourselves, enjoy the room. Like, we are all friends here. We want you to feel confident and, you know, ready to participate and not afraid. This is not a big corporate event. We're all games industry people, and we should act like we are. So let's give a little breath. And on 3, 2, 1, woo. 3, 2, 1, woo! Didn't that feel good? Loosen up. It is the best way that you're going to get the most out of this weekend, I promise you. All right. You mentioned stay organized. That could be its own talk. It certainly could. Do you have any quick tips? Did you build that spreadsheet yourself?
Yeah, of course I did.
Oh.
Listen,
I can fill out a spreadsheet. I can't make one.
it's not. I think I gaslit everyone with the like pretty colors. Like it wasn't that intense. Like I just made everything pink so it looked nice. Yeah, I don't know. As I mentioned, I work in like a corporate office as well as being a creative girly. And so I kind of got like forced into learning how to use Excel and stuff. But I think even a basic spreadsheet just to keep like it's to help you. It's not really to like help anyone else. Like when we were writing the first song, I didn't have that spreadsheet set up yet, and it was just a long chain of like, how about this, and you like lose track of notes very, very fast, especially when you're dealing with that many loops. So it was the only way that made sense, and I don't think we could have done it without my handy little Excel spreadsheet.
Do you know if there are any resources for like pre-built spreadsheet scaffolds for this kind of thing?
No, and I only say that because I made it up.
Yeah.
But I think you'll know what the core bits that you need depending on the project. So
it's given a lot of credit to some of us who don't like form.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think it's just like if you talk to the developer and you're like, what are the main parts that you need to know? Like, what do they need to know? So Jane needed to know the BPM. She needed to know the lyrics so that she knew that I was making sense. She needed a place to write notes and to have the most up-to-date versions. And that's kind of like the simplest way to put it. And like I said, a little like a tick column so you can be like, yay, we did it. I mean, it'll change for every kind of spreadsheet you make, but I think, yeah, having that communication with the development team before you make the spreadsheet is really handy.
I love that tip because it's also a sneaky little way that you can kind of like go to the producer and be like, what would work best for you? Is there a scaffold you would like me to work with?
So true. Do you want to make the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
And I'll fill it in so it's in line with the way that you work.
I know everyone does things differently, so if you just give me your
that's
process,
a great idea.
Yeah.
Outsource.
Did you make the music interactive? And if so, how did you split the stems out to get variation?
No.
Well, there you go.
We didn't, just because we like for Don't Stop, because we made 9 different versions of it. I guess it's interactive in the way that if you move on to a next section, it changes with it. But we didn't really deal much with the like sound designers themselves. Maybe we will. The games aren't out yet, so.
Actually, that's a great question. Did you have to think much about the sound design in terms of what you're making, even if it's just like making sure that you're not all sitting in the same frequency or anything like that, or you're doing you, they can do them?
We were just freeballing, to be honest.
I love that.
And we would be told if we did a bad thing. Kind of like ask for forgiveness later. We kind of went really hard on everything, and then if we needed to tone something down, like that's where the feedback process would happen. But we didn't really get told to tone down a lot because it's hyperpop and it's pop. They wanted it to be like, woo!
Well, it's interesting because watching the clips, they are very hype pop, and yet there was a part of me that was like, more. I want more, faster, more. How do you find, I guess, what the legal limit is of how hype you can get?
I mean, there's only so fast you can get, maybe. We kind of had a BPM limit for Don't Stop because you're working in the game to the BPM almost, and there's only so fast gamers can click buttons. So that was a hard limit, the physical restriction of the human hand. So when we use that was such a cute laugh. There was also like a slowness limit that we didn't want to go below because like you said, you really want to, the whole point of the game is to go fast. So
You want to feed that.
You want to
Yeah.
feed the fast.
Yeah. Do you think that it's important to have your own music project going at the same time as you're working on something like a game? Or do you find that the kind of collaboration and restriction, not said in a bad way, is akin to working in a band?
It's a great question. I started my own pop project before I even knew the gaming world existed. Like I knew it existed, but I wasn't working in it at that time.
You didn't see the space for you.
I didn't see the space for me yet, I guess. And I think if it's a path that you want to go down, it's like really rewarding to be able to work on your own music, and it kind of teaches you experimentation and to almost like, you know, get organized yourself, because it's just you, and it was just like me doing my pop solo stuff. But I think working in a team and working on music as well, like I said, like you learn to work in a team, and that's really, really important too. So I think both of those skills and both of those ways of working are valid, and if you want to do both, it's fun.
Well, do you think that it's also helpful career-wise? Because I think much of our careers is all just kind of like being known as the person who does the thing. Do you think that there's a benefit to having a solo career in order to put your name out there?
Yeah, I think so. I think today, like, your social media presence and your online presence is kind of like your business card. And so
how terrible is that?
Yeah, I know. Sorry. And so you don't have to be doing 1,000 things, but I think find the key things that you really, really love and genuinely love to do, because it's like any social media, if you're being genuine about it, like people will know and they'll like that. And so I think just like don't be afraid to not like be like, woo, I'm the best, but like show off, because I'm sure you're all doing amazing work and people want to see it, people want to hear it. If that is down the path of a solo project as like a body of work that you want to build out in order to get into the games industry, like that's kind of what I did, and it's a valid path to go down. If you just want to make up your own game music for your own made up game and release that, do that. Like use social media as your showcase space, I guess.
Are you worried about being pigeonholed, or you're just happy to do pop?
Pigeonholed the hell out of me. I love pop music.
I don't know.
That sounded really bad. Don't do that.
Sorry, I keep making changes.
I guess I am like I said, I'm a lover of all things, and I'm a lover of all genres. Pop music is definitely my favorite. I love dance music. I love pop music. I've made and love a lot of like indie alternate music too. I guess I've just naturally pigeonholed myself, I guess. I think me, Zave, we're like very versatile. We write a lot for other artists as well, like I mentioned, and they're in a lot of different genres. So like I enjoy doing it all. I just enjoy creating, but I think I enjoy pop music the most.
Yeah. And I guess it also speaks to, you know, networking, meeting new people, the fact that you wrote for Mystiques and then had someone approach you because they liked your work. It's also an opportunity to talk to people who are working on different projects and say like, hey, you know, I wouldn't mind giving that a shot if you wanted to unpigeonhole yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also why I mentioned the like Mystiques pathway into Don't Stop Girlypop, because you like I said, you don't know when something that you do is going to trickle down and affect something that you do later. So saying yes, not to everything, obviously don't exhaust yourself, but being open to opportunities that you might not have traditionally done is going to be really helpful.
I'm going to ask you one last question. How do you balance, I feel like this is always the question in creative industries, how do you balance getting paid, doing work that allows you to pay bills and that kind of thing, and investing in projects which are often indie projects, not a lot of money, because you love it, you believe in it?
Yeah, I think my problem is that I hate getting paid. I love getting paid.
So everyone hire her.
I love getting paid from like big corporations, but I don't because I'm an artist too, and I know how expensive things are, and so I work full time, and so it's more like not like my time is money, but like I work full time so that I can do things for like more, like indie teams and smaller creators, because I think it's really important to be able to build up the industry in that way. And I don't necessarily think that's how everyone should work. Like you all deserve to get paid. I just personally am lucky enough to have a full time job and to have that freedom and give back in that way. But pay your artists, I guess.
I think it's a really important and wonderful point that you make, though, that, you know, often it is really difficult to make sure that people are being paid for their work and not being taken advantage of. But I do believe that part of community is recognizing when you personally maybe are in a position to give back.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance too.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's about knowing your worth. And then if you know it, then you can negotiate from there. But you need to have an understanding of how much things are worth in the industry. And those conversations should be more more open with everyone, and like don't be afraid to ask me questions about it, or like other people I'm sure are very, very willing to talk about money. It is an awkward topic, but if you know, and if there's a baseline, you can know if you want to go under that, or if you're happy to go under that, and maybe you can work out another system of payment, whether it's royalties or whatever. There's lots of workarounds if you want to work on a project, but they don't necessarily have the money for it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and for taking us down that girly pop route.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It is now time for lunch. So if you want to head out, I believe